Today I'm going to be showing you how to make a greeting card for St. Patrick's Day. I'm starting with a standard 4¼ inch by 5½ inch base. And the technique that I want to share with you today uses washi tape. I went into my stash and I pulled out 5 rolls that are all green in honor of St. Patrick's Day, that all have a different pattern on them. And I have just a plain piece of cardstock there. Now, it doesn't have to be very thick cardstock, but you do want it thicker than, say, a plain piece of paper. And I'm just going to be laying down pieces of tape one after the other, different patterns one after the other, and making sure that I really firmly stick it to the paper. As you can see, I started with a green polka dot, and then after that was a chevron pattern, and then the third one is like an olive green, but it's a wood grain design. The one after that has got sort of like a little doodle pattern on it, and then I followed up with some green vertical stripes. Now I'm going to be repeating the order that I chose for the rolls of washi tape, and I believe I just repeat this one more time. But what it's going to give me is going to essentially give me a piece of pattern paper that I can then punch out shapes from. And the technique today, I originally was going to create some sort of shamrock using a heart shape, but it ended up that the idea worked better in my head than it actually did in real life. So I've altered things a bit, but you'll get the idea. I'm using a bone folder here to really make sure that the tape is very well stuck to the paper, because what you don't want to have happen is as you start punching out the shapes, you don't want the tape to start pulling away from the paper. Now I'm using a heart punch here from Stampin' Up. I don't believe they make it anymore, but it is a great shaped heart. It's not I don't think it's a standard shape heart. I call it my wonky heart. But it just is really interesting to use. Now I'm going to cut away the excess of the row that I just punched out, and then start on the next row. And the neat thing about holding the punch this way that I like is what it does is it allows me to see the placement of the shape on the item that I am punching out, and that way I can control how much color and pattern I want on each heart. So that's my set of hearts punched out there. And then I have a second punch. It's the Martha Stewart heart confetti punch. And I love this because it punches out great little hearts that I can use for an accent piece on this card. And the nice thing also that I wanted to point out about holding the punch the way I'm doing is that, as you can see, I can control where I punch out, and so I don't waste any of the paper that I'm cutting out. Here's my stamp, and this is another Stampin' Up stamp, and I've got my Stampin' Up writers there in 2 different color green, and I'm only really interested in the sentiment, which is happy everything on this particular for this particular card, and so I'm just using the pen to ink up the sentiment portion of the stamp. And so I've stamped it, but I don't like it. And so a great tip for if you don't like what you've stamped, you can always flip it over and just stamp on the other side, so you're not having to waste paper, and you can use all of the supplies that you have there. That's a lot better. Really like that. Now I just got this tool. It's the We Are Memory Keepers corner chomper. I think I'm saying that correctly. And it will chomp out 1/4 inch round or 1/2 inch round corners. Now I'm taking the other green that I have there, and I'm just running the pen along the edge of the card just to have it stand out a little bit against the green background. I love this technique. I sometimes will take just a stamp pad and do the same thing. As I mentioned before, my original idea was to create a shamrock, but it didn't work out, and so I am going to be creating a flower using the hearts. Now these, because they're not uniform hearts, I needed to draw just a simple circle there so that they can go around the circle and actually end up looking like a flower. I wanted to alternate. As you saw when I punched out the hearts, I did two different rows, and so I wanted to alternate the hearts for interest on the flower, and and so I'm just making sure that they're placed correctly. And I thought I would maybe try and add in an extra heart, but what that would do would throw up my alternating thing. And if you watch my stuff for very long, you'll know that I like things to be pretty much lined up and in order. And so I'm just, what I'm doing now is I'm just adjusting the distance between each heart to make sure that it makes a fairly perfect circle, and I don't have to add any more or take take any away. So I pulled out some green buttons from my stash, and I have a green rhinestone there. And so what I'm doing is I'm just layering a smaller button on top of the bigger button, and then putting the rhinestone on top of all of that, adding some glossy accents to attach the little button to the big button, and then that is going to be put into the center of the flower. And it's cool because it'll just cover up the pencil marks I had from the circle that I made. My glossy accents got stuck there, so I'm just unplugging that. I'm just going to set that aside to dry, and but first I'm just making sure that it looks good. Sorry for my head getting into the shot there. And so I'll just set that aside to dry while I attach the hearts to the card. I'm just using my a tape runner to just add a little adhesive to the back of the cards. The nice thing about using a thin piece of cardstock is that it's easier to, at least I think it's easier to attach the washi the washi shapes. It just, for some reason, it just seems simpler. So, and I'm taking some of these hearts out of order just to make sure that I don't mess up on the placement of them, so that it's still a fairly uniform circle. The nice thing about a tape runner is it is forgiving, and if you stick it down and then suddenly decide that it's not working for you, you can just quickly pull it up, and you're not going to create too much damage of the paper underneath. So there is the petals of the flower, and now I'm looking for my sticky tape. It's a double-sided adhesive, and I call this my super sticky tape because once you put anything down with this tape, it's not coming up. Unlike the tape runner, which is a little bit, it's forgiving. This stuff isn't. I decided also to add just a tiny bit to the smaller button because the glossy accents just, it wasn't drying fast enough for me, and so I wanted to speed the process along, and so I added just a tiny bit of the double-sided adhesive, and I'm going to just place that on top of the larger button. And I always, before I take off the back side of the adhesive, I always place it and make sure that it's where I want it, because like I said, with this stuff, once it's down, it's down. And so there we go. So it is stuck onto the card, and so we now have a flower. And I'm just going to add a couple more, like three of the little tiny hearts that I punched out for a tiny accent in the corner there. I think I have one of the larger hearts and then two little hearts that I'm placing there. And I believe that I use the glossy accents to put those down. Yes, I do. So we just attach those to the bottom of the card, and just once again, it just adds some interest. And depending on, like I said, depending on where you punched the heart, will give you a different design and different interest for the pattern that you're using. So almost getting to the end, and just all I have left to do is attach the piece that I have there. So normally what I would do would I would take my tape runner and run it along the back of the piece that I just created, but because of the button, it is creating sort of the thickness that if I went over with a tape runner, it would create like a speed bump. And I didn't want to, I don't know, I didn't want to damage it. And I want to make sure I got enough tape on the card so that it doesn't lift up. And same idea with the base, so I've just attached the green to the base and making sure everything is stuck down nicely, and then finally going to just finish it off with a tiny little detail by placing one of the Martha Stewart confetti hearts onto the inside of the card, so a little extra surprise for whoever gets this card.